everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com. That's right, I'm switching it up. And today I am back with another weekly forecast. This one is for July 23rd all the way through July 29th of 2018. And so this is a big week in the astrology. There's actually a lot going on this week with the big total lunar eclipse that's happening in the sign of Aquarius. It's going to be in a conjunction with retrograde Mars, and it's going to be forming a T-square with Uranus and Taurus. So it's going to be a little bit of a turbulent week. We also have, of course, Mercury, which is stationing to go retrograde in the sign of Leo. And, you know, anytime we have Mercury retrograde, people tend to experience a little bit more in the way of miscommunications, technological issues, mistakes, mishaps. It's just people tend to rush around a little bit more when Mercury is in retrograde, because Mercury, when it is in retrograde, it's 3 times closer to the Earth, and that means that the energy of Mercury is 3 times stronger. And so there's a lot of energy around communication. There's a lot of energy around our thought processes, planning, replanning, organizing, reorganizing. And so a part of the reason that we have these retrograde mishaps is because we're thinking and overthinking and trying to do too much all at once, rush around, all mercurial, right? And it can cause us to make mistakes. So this is a time, of course, when we have to check and double check and you know, make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row before moving forward. And so you know, just be aware and be cautious of that. But before we get into the full forecast, I do want to make a quick announcement for those who aren't already aware. I am doing a really in-depth webinar on relocation astrology, the astrology of place, where we're going to go really deep into everything and anything that has to do with travel and you know, making a big move in astrology, including the timing of a move in the transits and in the solar return chart. We're going to be going into where the best places are for you to live based on your own chart. Should you be in a certain setting like a mountainous area? Should you be near a lake, a river? Should you be in a big city? Should you live near the ocean? Where would you feel most satisfied based on your own personal chart? We'll also look at the astrocartography map. I'm going to break it down, make it really simplistic, so even if you only have a small knowledge of astrology, we're going to build from the ground up, and we're going to get even into the relocated charts. So if you haven't seen my tutorial videos, the part 1 and part 2 of my astrocartography series, go back. I'll put the links in the description below. But the webinar is going to be on September 15th. It's going to be 4 to 5 hours long, and it's going to be super in-depth. I already have a ton of people registering, and it's $10 off if you sign up and do it live. So not only do you get to do it live if you register now before September, but you also get $10 off. So there you go. So the link for that's in the description below. But anyways, back to the forecast for this week, because this is a really important week. So as I was mentioning before, beyond Mercury stationing to go retrograde, which is going to be influencing us and affecting us all in very different ways, and also it's going to be highlighting toward the end of the Mercury retrograde, which doesn't occur until August 18th. So we'll talk about that a little bit more that week, of course. But when Mercury stations to go direct, it's going to be stationing in a position where we had a total blood moon lunar eclipse in Leo back in January, and so that's going to be bringing up a lot of stuff. Leos in particular, anyone who is in the fixed signs. So if you have your sun, moon, and rising, especially at the first 10 degrees of Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, or Scorpio, you're going to be feeling the energy this week the strongest. You're going to have the most change, the most transformation, the most potential to start fresh, start new, to shake things up, to take some new initiative in some sort of way, or maybe to redo something, right? Because Mars in retrograde is part of this as well. But you're going to get the most momentum. You're going to have the most intensity, right? So people who have a lot of fixed energy might be feeling a little bit more frustrated, a little bit more overwhelmed, but that's okay. The frustration is leading you to change something, to move into a new path, a new direction, and you're going to be guided, right? Because this is eclipse season. Eclipse season is when we're guided by fate, we're guided by destiny. The signs, the synchronicities, the right people, the right situations show up in the right ways, even if we don't necessarily recognize it at the time, because it's a little bit turbulent or there's something going on that is uncomfortable for us. Usually with the eclipses, the end results are ultimately positive, even if you don't see it for even a couple years out, right? Because when we're talking about eclipses, we're talking about fate. We're talking about moving into alignment with our path, our purpose, our destiny. And so that's what this is this week. This is us moving into our destiny. And collectively, right, on a collective level, which could show up with a bit of turbulence, and if you haven't already seen the video that I did in collaboration with Robert Phoenix, I'll also put that in the description below, because we talked about the entire lunar month and what is happening this month more on a global scale, and more in a broader sort of perspective. And a lot of the stuff that we predicted together, especially Robert, I think needs to take more of the credit for that, actually, because he pieces things together on that sort of mundane global level in a way that I just can't even fathom. And a lot of the things that he was saying are starting to come true. So definitely go back and watch that. It is a little political, just to kind of forewarn you, if you're not, wanting to listen to something political, because some people don't. But for the most part, it was a really awesome video. So anyway, so this eclipse that's happening is going to be a game changer, I think, on a global level, on sort of a mundane level, on an everyday level, and in people's lives, especially if you have, again, those sun, moon, rising, or personal planets at these beginning degrees of the fixed signs. You're going to have a lot of change, a lot of transformation, a potential for a shake-up, a wake-up, but it's not necessarily going to be comfortable, especially with Uranus, especially with Mars-Uranus square involved. And also, for anyone who's listening to this, think back to around the time of May 15th. It doesn't have to be that exact day, but within a few days of that time frame, we had the very first Mars-Uranus square. That energy is being revisited this week. It's coming exact, actually, on the 20th. Wait, let's see here. It's coming exact on... Oh, it's not coming exact. Oh, okay. So there's going to be a Sun square Uranus. That Mars-Uranus square is being triggered this week, and then it's going to come exact again for the final time next week. And so that Mars-Uranus energy is going to be particularly strong, and so that's actually coming exact on August 1st. So pretty much now, like this weekend as I'm recording this, we have Mars conjunct the South Node, which we talked about really in depth last week. And so go back to that video if you haven't watched it, because you're going to get a lot of information that's going to be relevant to what's going on this week as well. And all the way through this week and into the middle of next week, it's going to be a lot of intensity, and a lot of turbulence, a lot of change. A lot of people might be feeling it. They might be feeling more agitated. You might be feeling a lot more anxious. And, that's just kind of part of the energy. So just make sure that you take time out for yourself, take time to rest and relax, stay grounded as much as you can. And I'm going to get into the forecast for all 12 signs, because I want to help you guys navigate this all, in your own personal life, in your own personal chart. And so I'm going to focus primarily on the eclipses. I will talk a little bit about Mercury retrograde, just because it is going to be affecting us for the next 3 weeks, but the main event this week is the eclipses, and obviously Mercury going to retrograde is part of that as well. Alright guys, so first and foremost, for Aries and for Aries rising. For Aries and Aries rising, this eclipse is actually occurring in your 11th house, which has to do with friendships, social networks, the people that you surround yourself with. And this is going to be the culmination point of some sort of energy that involves groups of people, your social networks, your friends, where there could be, potential for arguments, disputes. You might need to take the initiative in one way or another. You might need to tap into that energy that we talked about last week, where you need to either let go of certain resentments that you've been harboring, or you need to confront somebody about something that you've been holding on to for a long time, so that way you can release it and let it go. Because this is the culmination point of something, but it's also a South Node eclipse, and anytime we have a full moon, it's about releasing, letting go, looking back at what we've accomplished so far. This would be sort of the culmination of the energy that occurred 6 months ago when we had the eclipses in January, when we had a total, let's see here, the exact, I don't have my exact date on me. Darn it, I'm outside. I don't have my computer. But in in January we had eclipses that were happening in Aquarius and in Leo, and so this is a revisiting of that energy and a culmination point potentially of something that was initiated at that time involving your friends, your social networks. This is you needing to come back into balance between focusing on your own hobbies, your own self-interest, the things that you love to do, your passions, your creativity, your romance, having fun, you know, doing things your way because you love to do it that way, right? And focusing on the needs of other people and what other people think about what it is that you're doing. And so there's a need to surrender. There could be disputes involving money and finances that come up, involving your friendships, your social networks, involving some sort of charity organization even, or humanitarian types of pursuits if that's something that you're involved in. And this could really stimulate some sort of change involving your finances and your resources. There could be a little bit of turbulence there this week. And, you know, some of that turbulence could be sort of showing you that you need to find more independent and sovereign ways of creating money and resources for yourself, or to gain more independence in terms of your resources and your finances. And, you know, this is a good time for you to think about connecting your passions and the things that you truly love to do with, you know, the way that you create resources for yourself. Maybe turn one of your hobbies into something that's independent, that's creating money, you know, like a little business or something like that. It's not a time to act on that, obviously. I mean, you can act on it a little bit, but I wouldn't jump right in and start something right now, but it's a time to start thinking about that, right? And there could be changes that you need to make in this area if that's something that you're already engaged in. All right, so for Taurus and for Taurus rising, this is happening actually in your 10th house of career, public reputation. It's what you're doing out in the world. This, as I mentioned last week, you know, there's going to be an energy of needing to let go of old resentments, old ways of thinking that things need to happen when it comes to your career and the work that you're doing out in the world. This could bring up disputes with people in positions of authority, coworkers, business partnerships, all of that type of stuff could come up this week. And if it does, it's because you need to release it and let it go. But this could also bring the culmination point of, you know, a big major project that you know, have finally seen to completion, right? When it comes to your work and all of that, there's a need to shift your focus and to create balance between your home and your family life and your need to pursue meaningful work out in the world, right? So there's a need to come back into balance in this area, and there could be some sort of culmination point that involves both. The one thing I would say is that if there is some sort of big project or something that's coming to fruition this week, it might not go exactly as planned, but the disruption and the changes that come about because it's not going as it's planned, they're actually going to ultimately be beneficial. So this is going to lead you to do things in new and exciting ways. If you've been approaching your work in the same way day in and day out, this is going to sort of shake things up for you and help you to create greater sovereignty, greater independence to do things in new and exciting ways when it comes to your work and what it is that you're doing out in the world. This could also bring a change, especially if you have a really strong connection to that Sun in Leo in that South Node, with your IC maybe at the first degrees in Leo. This could bring a change in residence for a lot of Taurus people. And it could be a change in residence due to a need to let go of a job or a need to take some sort of action with your work to pursue something new. And so, you know, a lot of these things could come to fruition. It might not necessarily happen right away, but there's something that could happen that could spark it. And then the Mercury retrograde, you know, that's going to be happening also in the 4th house. So this is a good time to reorganize, to really sort of enhance your space, revisit anything that has to do with your home, your family, your property, re-editing stuff, rehashing old conversations, that type of thing. So there's your home life is going to be on your mind a lot, but you're going to kind of be pulled out of that into this week. For Gemini and for Gemini rising, a lot of this energy is centered in your 9th house with the full moon eclipse there. And so this could be some sort of culmination point involving higher education. It could be involving long distance travel, teachers, people in foreign countries. It could just be involving, you know, some sort of adventure, right, that you've been wanting to embark on. And maybe, you know, it's finally coming to fruition, but it's not exactly what you thought it would be. Maybe it's a little bit frustrating to get yourself there. Maybe things change a little bit. Maybe, you know, and it could be that there's something internally that's causing you to rebel against the plans that you've already made. And so you have to go back and revisit it. You need to let things go. You need to find a new way to do things. There is a need to come back into balance between focusing on day-to-day mundane tasks, routine conversations, your immediate surroundings, your immediate community, even things like siblings, bureaucracy. This could actually bring some sort of shakeup if you're dealing with any sort of legal proceedings. it could get a little intense and a little dicey this week, but the changes that are being made, even if they don't necessarily feel good in the moment, are going to ultimately be beneficial, you know, kind of more in the long term, right? And so there is a change that needs to be made here in the way that you're going about things. And this could be a culmination point of something that happened involving travel. Again, education is a big one on the 3rd and 9th house axis. Your beliefs. This could just simply be like you having to let go of old beliefs about life, God, the universe, where it shakes you to your core and you have to completely change the way that you think about the world, right? And that could be very disturbing for some people. So, you know, that type of energy could be coming up for you right now, where you have to rethink life in general, the way that you, all of your beliefs, your political beliefs, your ideological beliefs, your philosophical beliefs, all of those are up for change and review right now. And so, and there could be disputes about ideological things and issues of integrity, issues of morality, ethical issues that could come up for you at this time as well. And so these are all just different potentials. With Mercury retrograding in your 3rd house, that's a really strong energy for miscommunications and mishaps that are mercurial. So all the things that happen during Mercury retrograde, where people are like, don't sign contracts, you're going to have, you know, everything breaking and all these miscommunications, emails getting lost, weird, you know, disputes because people are not communicating well. For Geminis and Gemini rising in particular, that's going to be stronger this Mercury retrograde than normal, just because it's in its home sort of house, right? And I remember one year when I had Mercury retrograding in my 3rd house, I thought this will be a piece of cake. Mercury in the 3rd house. I mean, the 3rd house is just Mercury stuff, right? It's already going to be haywire. It was like 3 times more annoying, I would say. I was having, and it's nothing bad that happens that's like overtly horrible. It's just all these little things that could go wrong. So you might end up feeling kind of annoyed during the Mercury retrograde for Gemini risings. But this is a good time to review, re-edit, you know, go back if you're writing something and sort of revise. This is a really good time to go back and take care of paperwork and different sort of bureaucratic things that you've been putting off. Those types of things are actually advisable at this time. For Cancer and for Cancer rising, this is actually happening in your 2nd house and your 8th house. And so the full moon lunar eclipse is happening in your 8th house of death, rebirth, transformation. It's the deep psychological stuff that could come out. There could be a lot of power struggles and disputes for Cancer and Cancer rising, or it could just be you going deeper, right, doing the deep inner work. This will bring the culmination most likely of something that was seeded either last year at this time or in January. So a lot of those themes that have been coming up for you during the eclipse cycles, they're going to be revisited, but in a more intense way that causes you to need to take some sort of action to support your own empowerment. And this could actually bring difficulties, miscommunications, or some sort of disruption that comes from your social circle, and it could involve issues of power and control, money issues, of course, in the 8th and the 2nd house could come up. This could be the culmination point of something that was started that brings more money in from the outside, but maybe it's a little bit more complicated than what you might have thought. Maybe, you know, your husband or your wife or your partner, maybe they, you know, got a new job, got a raise, you thought it was going to turn out one way, and then, you know, there's some sort of disruption. And so, you know, that is a potential. There is a need to find balance between creating resources through your own effort and your own hard work, and finding ways to generate money from the outside through investment, through things like, it could be like things like inheritance, but if you're actively engaging in it, it'd be more like obviously something like doing an investment or setting yourself up to, you know, generate money later on without having to put in that effort. So yeah, there could be a lot of catharsis that's coming up for, you know, Cancer and Cancer rising. This is the 8th house, it runs deep. But this is a time of deep and profound healing. So any of your stuff that you haven't been dealing with, that you've been called to deal with, because of this 8th house influence that's been going on with the eclipses for you, you'll know the themes, right? The themes of power struggles, especially power struggles with money and sexuality and those types of, you know, those types of themes. Thinking back to the past 2 eclipses, like, you'll know what's going to be coming up, but it's going to be coming up more intensely this time. This is really the last chance to sort of get it right, to let go of what needs to be let go of. This is the culmination point, the final release, and it's going to probably require some sort of action on your part, either if that's internally just releasing and letting go and not harboring any resentment and choosing to become empowered and to move forward more sovereign, in a way that's more sovereign, or, you know, it could be that you need to confront somebody more directly, right? And so that could be part of it too. All right. For Leo and for Leo rising, this energy is happening in your first and your seventh house. And so for Leos in particular, this is going to be kind of a strange week. Oh, so let's go back real quick to Cancer, just the Mercury retrograde. You're going to be thinking, rethinking, rebudgeting. It's all about finances and honing in on your finances, right? So creating that budget, revising that budget, taking care of bills that maybe got lost in the mail, that type of thing, right? Making sure that your finances are in order. So now let's go into Leo, Leo rising. So for Leo rising, this is going to be a culmination point of something that, has been going on for about a year now, but it's going to involve relationships, and especially if you have your ascendant in particular in the first 10 degrees of Leo, this is going to be a very strong energy for you. And even when you have your sun, because this is going to be your solar return, this is going to be an intense year if you have your birthday this week. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, it just means there's a lot of change going on for you. But for Leo rising, this is going to be a lot of energy, not just about your own self-interest and what you want, what you need, what you desire, because when you have the North Node transiting your ascendant, there's a tendency to become more selfish because you're being called to be more selfish. You're being called to stop caring about other people's needs, wants, and desires, and to focus more on your own self-interest. But sometimes you can take it a little overboard when you have the North Node on your ascendant, right? Because you become obsessed. And, not just because it's Leo, right? But in general, when you have the North Node on the ascendant, you can become self-obsessed and self-absorbed during that transit. And so this is you needing to come back into balance. And, if you have been leaning toward being a little bit too self-involved, that could cause conflict, right? This could also involve some sort of conflict that has to do with partnerships in business, because this is going to be in a T-square with Uranus that is going to be at the top of your chart in your 10th house of career, public reputation. There's a lot that's going to be changing for you in your career over these next 8 years, and that is being highlighted, and there's something that you have to do. You have to take some sort of initiative on. And it's not an initiative like this is a brand new thing I've never done before. It's something that you've known that you've needed to sort of address in your relationships or in your partnerships, and especially in your business partnerships. It could even be something like, you and your partner are fighting because you work too much or something, right? And you need to change something about your work situation because it's not conducive to having a healthy relationship. The other thing that's going on for Leo rising is that Mercury is, of course, going retrograde in your sign. And so, Leos are another sign that are going to be more subject to those Mercury retrograde mishaps. And so unless Mercury is retrograde in your birth chart, you might want to think extra hard before you speak, before you send that email, before you do that, whatever that thing is that you're about to be doing, because, Mercury retrograde, that's you making mistakes, right? Very literally, when you're acting on your own self-interest out in the world. And people might not understand you as well during this Mercury retrograde period. You might feel more misunderstood. And so that's kind of the influence of the Mercury retrograde. But there's a need to come back into balance right now between your needs, your self-interest, and what your partner needs or what your close friendships need. You need to come back into balance in relationship right now. For Virgo and for Virgo rising. So for Virgo, this is going to be happening in your 12th and your 6th house. The full moon eclipse is happening in your 6th house. So this has to do with your work, your day-to-day routines, your health even. And so there could be some sort of culmination point or something that you need to let go of, that you need to take some sort of action in order to let go of, involving your coworkers, your career, your day-to-day work routines, and also your health, right? There could be some sort of health issue that maybe you've been sort of sticking with the same regimen, hoping that if you keep at it, that it's going to work differently this time. And maybe now it's time to let that go, so that way you can make space for a new way of healing yourself, right? Same thing with your daily routines. Maybe you keep going, pushing really hard, and maybe it's time to let go of pushing so hard. Maybe you need to make some space to create new routines or to find a new job even. Uranus in the 9th house is giving you a little bit of wanderlust, where you might feel very frustrated with the status quo in your day-to-day experience. And so there's a need to break free and a need to change something, and that might even cause you to take a big trip or a big vacation or plan something along those lines, or just start some new schooling, right? Because maybe the day-to-day grind of doing the same thing and working really hard and being really busy, it's just not working for you. You need something better. So all of these things could be part of it. But that's for Virgo, Virgo rising. The Mercury retrograde is happening in your 12th house. So this is going to be more about, it's going to be a little bit more internalized. You're going to be spending a lot of time sort of in contemplation and meditation, thinking about the future, that type of thing. So this is a really good time to engage in spiritual practices that help you to sort of uncover hidden stuff beneath the surface and all of that. But it's a good time for rest. It's a good time to rest your mind, because your mind's not really going to be online, especially, you know, being a Virgo, having Mercury in the 12th house, right? You're not going to be able to access the ability to make really good, clear decisions unless you're doing it more intuitively. Okay. For Libra and Libra rising, this energy is happening in your 11th and 5th house. And so the full moon is going to be happening in your 5th house of romance, of play, of spontaneity, of children, of, you know, the things that you love to do because your heart's in it, right? Because you're passionate about it. And so having the full moon conjunct Mars in this area, it could bring some sort of disputes or some sort of unexpected developments in romance if you're, you know, engaged in some sort of romantic relationship or some sort of fling, right? It's usually more like boyfriends, girlfriends, love affairs, you know, those types of things. When we're talking about the 5th house, it's not serious relationships. So it could bring, you know, a culmination point in some sort of relationship like that, where it's like, okay, you know, we got to decide, is this going to get serious, or is it time to move on, right? This could also be some sort of conflict involving children. So if you have any children, there could be some sort of conflict or dispute involving money, resources, where something needs to change. Maybe it's that your partner needs to go back to work to make more money, or maybe they are, you know, they need to come home a little bit more and help around the house, help with the kids, right? There could be disputes if you have, if you're, you know, somebody who's divorced, especially for women, with the father of your child, involving finances and financial matters. So you're going to be called to focus on that. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to engage in play and the things that you love to do. There could be some sort of culmination point of something that was seeded before that involves like something that you really love and that you really want to do, and something that is just fun for you, right? That you're really passionate about. And you might want to engage in that this week, but there might be some disruption to that. There might be a need to sort of let it go and make space for something new to come in. You're going to have also a lot of energy in your 11th house, so there's kind of a need to come back into balance between focusing on other people's needs, wants, and desires, focusing on the group, the hive mind, your friendships, and focusing on what you're passionate about. And Mercury is going to be going retrograde in your 11th house, so this could bring miscommunications involving your friendships, right? So your groups, your social networks, the internet in particular, might be a little bit more difficult for you. So be careful of what you say online, be careful of what you say via email. You know, there could be internet connection issues, those types of things, and miscommunications with your friends. So that's kind of what's coming up for you in terms of the Mercury retrograde. For Scorpio, for Scorpio rising, this is happening in your 10th and your 4th house. There's a need to come back into balance between focusing on your career, which Scorpio and Scorpio rising, having, you know, the North Node in your 10th house of career, that's been a lot of your focus over this past year. And so there's a need to reintegrate the needs of the home, the family, the property, and there could be some sort of crisis or some sort of big, you know, frustration that comes in that causes you to have to focus more on your home and your family and your property. And there could be disputes that come in partnerships or in your one-on-one personal relationships, business partnerships. If you work with clients, you might have some weird stuff come up, and it could be a little bit disruptive. It could be a little bit frustrating, but ultimately it's causing you to need to change the way that you're going about doing things so you can create better balance between your home, your immediate environment, your relationship with your family, those types of needs, and your need, want, and desire to you know, do something out in the world with your career, to be out in the world being seen, right? That's Leo on the midheaven. And so, you know, this is maybe a little bit of a dicey week for relationships. There could be some really frustrating experiences that come up with your work, but the ultimate sort of goal here is to let go of an old way of doing something, or to let go of old resentments and frustrations involving your home and your property and your family, your roots, your ancestors, whatever it is, right? And that's going to create space for you to move into something new and exciting in that area. Maybe it's going to create space for you to move somewhere that you've always wanted to live, or just to have a better balance, right? That's kind of the main thing when we're talking about anytime we're talking about a full moon or, you know, the North and South Node. It's about coming back into balance. And so Yeah, and getting yourself out of your comfort zones, changing paths, changing direction. And Mercury is going to be retrograding in your 10th house, and so there could be a lot of miscommunications and mishaps and things that you need to do and redo, like redoing paperwork. I have this placement myself, and I have to redo a whole bunch of stuff that's business related and paperwork related, which is like my worst nightmare, right? And it's not even started to retrograde yet, so you could find yourself having to redo, paperwork that has to do with your career, your business, your job. You might have to reevaluate some things, redo some projects, re-edit some stuff that you're putting out into the world. And so, that's the nature of having Mercury in retrograding in your 10th house. Career mishaps a little bit. So, just be careful in that area. Double and triple check everything that has to do with your work these next 3 weeks. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, this is happening in your 3rd and 9th house. And so this is the culmination point of some sort of energy that's been going on for you pretty much since this time last year, and especially back in January, that would have come exact again. You would have had sort of eclipses happening in the 3rd and 9th house. And so what this does is it brings first off, it's bringing you back to focusing on the details. Sagittarius in general is more about the big picture, right? The broader perspective, learning through experience, having those adventures, gaining sort of broader, more philosophical knowledge. It's about your beliefs, your morality, your integrity, and your religious values, if that's something that you subscribe to, or spirituality, or whatever it is, right? It's about that bigger picture, that broader perspective that frames this reality. And this is going to bring you a little bit back down to earth. There could be something really frustrating that comes up involving sort of day-to-day communications, and that causes you to have to redo some paperwork or relearn some sort of lesson. You might have to engage in some sort of certification process, or redo it. Maybe you thought that it was done or finished, or maybe you thought that you were going to do something in a certain direction involving your education, and now you have to sort of let that go and let go of old resentments, old wounds. Sagittarius in particular is one that is more prone during this time to disputes with coworkers and in your workplace. Also, health issues could come up that are going to cause you to need to look at things in a different way. So if you were treating something one way and it comes back around, you have to look at alternatives, right? You have to look at things that are a little innovative, outside of the box, things that you maybe wouldn't have thought of before or tried before, but now that it's come back, you have to look into these options. This could definitely bring some sort of disruption to your mindset, to your beliefs involving your work, or this could just be you engaging in some sort of additional education to change something about your day-to-day work experience that has become just unbearable because you can no longer stand the status quo. And so all of that stuff could be coming up for Sagittarius. Mercury will be retrograding in your 9th house. That's kind of, if you're traveling to like a foreign country right now, definitely, double check all of your, planes and your tickets and, the time that everything's going to arrive, because there could be delays. If you're, studying for an exam or something like that, anything involving higher education, double, triple, quadruple check everything that you're doing. But for the most part, this is going to be, it's going to be you thinking and rethinking your beliefs again about, God, the universe, your philosophies on life. Some of your beliefs might change. Some of your ideas might change. Your mindset overall is probably going to change pretty drastically during this eclipse season. So whatever that means to you, right? And there is a need to sort of get in there and change something about your health as well, or your daily routines. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, this is happening in your 2nd and 8th house. The full moon eclipse is happening actually in your 2nd house of finance. There could be some sort of dispute involving finances, or there could be some sort of need to take action on something and change something involving your finances, and to change it rather drastically. And sort of the goal of this change is likely to be to create more space for you to do the things that you love to do, to engage in your hobbies, your interests, your passions, the things that you do because you love to do it, or to do something that's going to free up space so that way you can spend more time with your children, so that way your children can have a better life. That type of thing could come up for you. There could be some sort of push and pull between your partner's finances and your finances. There could be issues with debt, other people's money, inheritance, taxes, all of that kind of stuff could come up at this time. There's a need to kind of create a balance between surrendering and letting go of your resources and needing to create and cultivate resources through your own efforts, your own hard work. And you might be focusing really intensely during this time on creating more money for yourself, or redoing something, or reinitiating something that you were doing before that was, you know, working better for you, because Mars in retrograde is a part of this. But there could be fights, not like fist fights, hopefully, but like, you know, arguments and disputes about money and resources that could come up, and you have to decide, just like we talked about last week, what are you going to do with this? Are you just going to let it go? Are you going to face it head on? Are you going to be direct with that person? Are you going to argue about it? Or are you just going to, you know, be a little bit more passive and just sort of release it truly and fully so you can move on? And for you, Mercury is retrograded in your 8th house. So this could bring up, you know, just little things about power struggles, debts, you know, other people's money, issues with resources that you have to think and rethink, rebudget. Maybe there's a debt from the past. This is a common one with Mercury retrograding in the 8th house, where you thought that you paid that bill 8 years ago or whenever, you know, and it just shows up in the mail and you're like, oh, I have this bill that I forgot about, right? So unexpected expenses, especially involving debts or taxes or something like that, can come up, you know, during this time too. So just kind of be aware of that. Make sure you have your finances and your budget and everything in a row. All right, for Aquarius and Aquarius rising, this energy is going to be also in your 1st and your 7th house. And so for Aquarians, you might have been focusing really intensely on your relationships over this past year especially. And now is a time when there's going to be a little bit of tension or friction that's going to cause you to need to focus on your own needs, your own self-interest, your own comfort zones, what you want to initiate, what you want to do with your energy, with your time. This could cause disputes in relationships, arguments, especially for those who have sun, moon, and rising at the first 10 degrees in Aquarius. And it could be disputes involving your home, your property, right? If you live with your partner, there could be something that needs to change about your home environment, and that could come up right now for you to have to deal with. And that could cause some sort of friction or some sort of need to communicate or be more direct if you haven't been. Or, you know, maybe this is one of those opportunities for you to sort of let it go and to truly let it go, right? Not to harbor resentment moving forward. So it just kind of depends where you're at with that. But this could involve some sort of disputes. There is a need to come back into balance. If you've been focusing way too heavily on your relationships and the needs of your partner, this is when you're going to come back and focus on your own needs and what you want. And how are you going to create that? What are the blockages to you acting on your own willpower out in the world right now, and how can you release those? And how are those blockages tied into your partners and focusing on what your partners want instead of what you want, right? Always wanting to appease the other. That's not, you know, usually always the case for Aquarians, but that, you know, there's been a strong energy in your 7th house, so it could be. And there could be a need to change something about your home environment, especially if you have that IC anywhere near that 2nd degree in Taurus. But in general, changes to the home might facilitate the appropriate changes that need to happen in your relationships. For Pisces and for Pisces rising, so this energy is happening in your 12th house, which is the house of all things that are hidden away from the world. It's the house of your subconscious. It's the house of dreams. It's the house of your spiritual practices. It's the house that involves 12th house institutions like prisons and hospitals and ashrams, monasteries, spiritual retreat centers, right? Places that are hidden away from the world intentionally, even places like brothels. So, you know, different issues, unusual issues could come up involving these sorts of institutions. But for the most part, this is going to be some sort of internalized sense of frustration that you need to let go of. And so that would come through in the way of like messages, psychic impressions, dreams, that type of thing. Also, this is the house of hidden enemies, and in a nice little square here with Uranus that's in your 3rd house, this could bring out hidden enemies up to the surface. Also, if you've been focusing way too much on your day-to-day routines, your work, being very busy day in and day out, this is a time when you're going to shift your focus and spend more time in solitude and contemplation, but you're going to have to actively make sure that this happens. So this is you taking action to make sure that you get that time for yourself, because that's going to be really important for you this week. There could be some sort of unexpected communications that come up that are triggered, some sort of information that shakes up your current paradigm or causes you to have to change something and do something new, or to think about something in a new way. And you know, this disruption and this frustration that, I mean, ultimately has a lot to do with your 6th house of your, you know, day-to-day work and your relationship with your coworkers, and this could also bring disputes with your coworkers. this could ultimately lead you to need to change something by getting some sort of additional education or certification, because that's the third house, right? It's certification. It's like smaller education, more practical skill sets. And with Mercury going retrograde in your sixth house, just be very careful, you know, at work, right? Because that's where a lot of the Mercury retrograde mishaps are going to be centered around. So miscommunications at work, submitting the wrong, you know, file to whoever it is that you wanted to send it to, sending the email to the wrong person, right? Making sure that you have your ducks in a row there, that your technology is working properly as it, you know, relates to your work. And, you know, that'll save you a little bit of frustration if you plan ahead and just make sure that you're double checking everything. Oh, and your health could be on your mind too, so you might need to revisit, you know, your health routines, reorganize your supplement cupboard or whatever. But you might need to sort of revise and revisit and, you know, change things up when it comes to the way that you approach your health on a day-to-day basis as well. All right, so that is Pisces. And I'm losing light here. I have to do these recordings when I do them outside in the evening because it's really hot here. But I hope that you found this really helpful, and I really hope that you guys have a wonderful eclipse season. I always love when you guys leave comments below. I like to, you know, always try to answer as many as possible because that's fun for me. So if you have any questions, comment below. If you want to book a reading with me, you can do so at the link in the description below. And if you want to sign up for my webinar, if you want to learn how to find the best place for you to vacation, the best place for you to travel, the best place for you to relocate or to do business, right? If you're doing business with people in different countries, you can sign up for my webinar. The link is in the description below. It's only $29 until September 15th. All right, thank you all so much, and yeah.